Welcome back. We're talking with Janet Cantor Gari, and her books have really relate to her family. It's Don't Don't Wear Silver in the Winter, which has to do with her mother and the girls growing up, and it's published by Bear Manor. And then there's Themes from My Father. This has to do with politics and the fact that Eddie Cantor was a very liberal man, and the fact that he would discuss politics with you, Janet.
Very much so, and he always said to us, and he really impressed it upon us, if you feel something is wrong, don't just sit there, do something about it.
Well, that's what they're saying now. If you see something, say something.
Yeah,
and that comes from that. But I thought it was wonderful that with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he was the one who said about March of Dimes.
Yes, well, he had called my father to ask if he knew 10 millionaires who would give money every year for the Infantile Paralysis Foundation. And my father said, I don't know if I could do that. He said, but why don't you get everyone involved? And he said, what do you mean? Well, at that time, the March of Time was a very big newsreel.
Yeah.
And he said, how about the March of Dimes? And he said, have everyone contribute a dime. And Roosevelt said, well, where would they send it? And he said, you have a very nice address right here.
Yeah.
And that's when, barrels full of dimes kept coming in. And my father did live to see the vaccine.
Real? Oh, that's what makes living worthwhile, except that he had given so many people pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reason was, and I was explaining this to Neil Sedaka's wife once, because Neil's like that too. He doesn't play to an audience, he plays for an audience.
Yeah. And I love this picture of them.
Yeah.
On their honeymoon there? Look at the way your mother is dressed.
Can you imagine how things changed?
Well, when you see that, and then you see the cover, it certainly is a big change.
Yes.
Yeah. What was she like?
Well, my father fell in love with her because, and Brian has written a song about it, she was the belle of Henry Street.
Yeah.
She was very athletic, the only one of us, because the rest of us don't move at all. Yeah. And he saw her doing the high jump in her schoolyard.
Yeah. Oh, the balloon pants.
And he just fell for her head over heels.
And as a mother, because 4 daughters.
Well, I didn't have a close relationship with her, which you would see in the book. Mm-hmm. My first 3 sisters did, because she raised them herself. But they could afford a nurse by the time Marilyn was born. Mm-hmm. So she wasn't that close to her either. And she nearly died when I was born. So they had to get someone.
And coming here to Beverly Hills High, when was that a picture from your high school?
No, that was later on, but that's how my sister Napoli looked when she went here.
And coming here, how many of the other kids had fathers who were that successful?
Well, let me see. In my class was Shirley Locke, who was the daughter of either Lum and Abner. She was the daughter of Lum. And June Haver was a class ahead of me. And Maria Tallchief was dancing with her sister at all the assemblies. She was so spectacular even then. Yeah. I mean, it was such a treat when the 2 sisters would dance.
What was your talent?
At school? Mm-hmm. Writing.
Writing. Yeah. Did you ever write screenplays?
No, and I wish I did, because right now, when I write words and music to different shows, but getting a book writer is the toughest thing in the world, and I don't know how to write a play or a screenplay. I don't know from dialogue.
Whom are you writing these words and music for?
Well, I did a show called Such a Pretty Face, and the book writer was Jeff Geddes. And I did a show called Firstborn, really based upon my sister Margie's life.
Yeah.
And the book writer was Sharon Talbot. And then recently I did a show called Back to Broadway, and the book writer was Donald Yonker.
Oh.
And I depend upon that because I think if a show is good, it's because the songs come out of
the story.
script. They come out of the story.
Yeah, that was something that Rodgers and Hammerstein had in their plays. It added and pushed the story forward.
Well, Rodgers happens to be my idol, so
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I agree with that totally.
Now, what was Margie's life like that you wrote about her, but not the other
Margie
three?
was a very strange, wonderful, loving person, but she never allowed herself a life of her own. She basically took care of everyone, including my folks, even before they were sick.
Yeah.
And she took care of all of us. And everything was for her family and what she could do for us. And even, I mean, she and Natalie were only 13 months apart, and they were best friends. And Natalie always said, I never did find out what made Margie tick.
Yeah.
She would not do anything outside of the house. Samuel Goldwyn offered her own office.
Yeah.
She turned it down.
She may have been frightened by Little Women, and she wanted to be Meg.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so because, and she would win contests and things all the time in other people's names.
Yeah. Oh.
She would never do anything on her own.
Yeah. Where did you get the gumption and the strength after you were mugged and you were just telling me about it to get back to even this strength that you have now?
Back
to being able to move around and be available.
Well, it's very interesting. I figured what it was psychologically. Margie was always so protective of my folks that if we all went out together or anything, out to dinner, she felt that we made a spectacle of ourselves because there were so many of us anyway, and it was always, don't make a scene in public, don't make a scene in public. And when I wrote my first show, I realized I was literally writing a scene in public.
Yeah.
And it just freed me of everything.
So no matter what happened to you, you got back up into the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I complain all the time since I was mugged.
Yeah.
I complain to Brian and his wife until I drive them crazy.
Do you live alone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do manage. Oh, with a walker, I can zoom around my apartment, but I can't really go out alone.
Yeah. Well, because there's the instinct, is it going to happen again?
Well, it's not just that. It's just that the walker, the sidewalks have so many cracks and things. I'm afraid the walker will get stuck, and then I won't know what
How
to
large a class was there for you here at Beverly Hills High School?
do. We had a pretty big class.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, one class in particular I will always remember fondly because it goes along with my whole political thinking. His name was Mr. Bierke, and he was my favorite teacher ever. He was so subtle, and he tried to provoke discussions, and nobody was paying any attention. They were all silly little Beverly Hills girls busy curling their hair in study hall and paying no attention.
Yeah.
And there was one boy who felt the way I did, and we both had these big discussions, and we finally ended up going to the senior prom together, even though neither of us could dance. But we had so much to talk about from Mr. Bierke's class.
And after high school, what did you do?
I ran away from home, went to New York.
Yeah. And who gave you your first job there?
My folks made me come home until I was 18. It was only 3 months, but they made me come home. And then we all left together. And this time I had a roommate, and she and I were looking for some secretarial work in something theatrical. So they sent us to the New York office of Universal Pictures. Well, that sounds interesting, but they put us in the legal department.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were doing. We took it down in shorthand and transcribed it and never had any idea of what we were saying.
Well, you know why. They probably called Eddie and your
No,
mother.
no, no, nobody knew. Nobody knew
Oh.
who I was in there at all.
You're sure?
Yes,
I was
because
gonna
one
say-
day he
yeah.
did call, and
Yeah.
they were in a state of shock.
Oh, okay.
They had no idea.
Because I figured they probably said, keep our daughter there. Maybe she'll marry a nice lawyer.
No,
No.
no, they didn't know who I was at all.
Yeah. Then when did you make the break into music and writing?
Well, I had been studying classical music and always written classical. But Harry Ruby, the songwriter's daughter, Toby, had seen a show that Elaine May wrote for her daughter, and she said, gee, I'd like to do a fairy tale for my daughter. And she had heard some of my music. She said, would you be interested in collaborating?
Yeah.
I said, sure, it sounds great.
Yeah.
And so we did. We wrote, she had a very funny idea called Rapunzel of Riverside Drive.
Love
And
it. Yeah.
the Rapunzel gets rescued by the driver of the number 5 bus. And the reason she has to let down her hair is because the self-service elevator isn't always working. So the witch climbs up her braids, and it was a very funny idea. In fact, it was so funny that we kept writing song after song after song. And had we ever gotten it produced, it would have been a 3-hour show.
What happened to the idea of the show? It never went in, because it's very clever.
Oh, it was, and our
Yeah.
songs really were terrific. But once again, we had no book writer, and
Yeah.
she didn't know how to write a play any more than I did.
Yeah.
So we never knew how to cut it or how to put it together. And every time we got a new idea, we wrote another song.
Now, when Brian was doing his plays, were you involved at all?
In late night comics?
Yeah.
Not in the least. I am not a stage mother.
Uh-huh. How about a stage songwriting mother?
Oh, no. No. Brian is far more talented than I am.
Mm-hmm.
Brian is a fabulous musician.
Yeah.
And I learned from him.
Yeah.
In fact, many a time I've been writing something, I've called him up in the middle of the night and said, Brian, I got the bridge into the key of D, and I don't know how to get back to, and he'll say, oh, we'll try this chord, that chord, that chord. You'll make it back.
Yeah. And you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you remember George Jessel at all?
Georgie Jessel was such a strange combination because on stage he was, I couldn't stand him. He was
right.
obnoxious.
Yeah.
At home, he was one of the funniest people I ever heard. He used to come over almost every night with 2 gorgeous women on his arm and stick them with my mother while he played cards with my father.
Yeah.
And he made my father laugh till the tears rolled down his face. But as far as Mother was concerned, Mother was very smart. And she said to us, I don't know what to say to these girls. She said, I can't even say, have you read any good books lately? Because I don't know if they can read.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
It was funny.
But I loved the line in Brian's book that your father said, don't let him speak at my funeral.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He said, as much as Georgie loves me, he says, I know he's waiting for that day, and I will not give him the satisfaction.
Janet, what a pleasure to meet you. I hope we'll have a chance to talk about the other books some other time. Will you autograph my book? And if you'd like to know what else we've been reading, visit me on the web at www.Connie.Martinson. You can read our columns from the Beverly Hills Courier. And if you want, go to YouTube, and there's a Connie Martinson's channel, which now today was 980,000 visitors. So join the group. Or Claremont Graduate University that has digitized the first 2,000 shows. But whatever you do, support your local library. That's the most valuable, really, institution in America. What did a library mean to you growing up here, Janet? What did the library mean to you growing up in Beverly Hills?
The library?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I was just writing something recently about that. I never learned the Dewey Decimal System, and I never found any need for it whatsoever. But I spent a lot of time at the library.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.